Hello, I am Brock Stanton. I am an aspiring meteorologist, and today we are going to be doing a quick update on this enhanced risk for severe weather, which includes two areas that have a 5% risk for tornadoes within a 25-mile radius. The threat's a little uncertain because of the moisture concerns with the system, but the more significant risk with this setup is going to be very large hail, perhaps over 2 inches in diameter. We can see there's this two separate areas of where that have been highlighted to have a greater chance of seeing 2+ inch hail. These two areas here, and then also a 30% significant has been added for wind as well to do with that overnight line of storms that has trended. While it's still not clear exactly how organized the line is going to be, overall the trend has been towards a more significant line of storms, so that's why there's been an upgrade to a 30% significant from the Storm Prediction Center. And then what we're going to be talking about mostly in this video is this day 2 risk for severe thunderstorms. I think the main threat with this event is going to be damaging wind and perhaps a little bit of hail. A couple tornadoes also can't be ruled out, especially in these two 5% zones, and we're going to break that down in a minute. But I do think overall the most notable risk for the day 2 is going to be damaging winds. There also is a day 3 marginal risk, which I may make a video about tomorrow if it were to be upgraded to a slight risk, where I saw something very intriguing I wanted to talk about with that setup. So let's switch it over to the models. We are going to start with the HRRR, and we're going to go to the 18Z. You're going to see this is the supercell storms that fire later today, pose a risk for a few tornadoes and significant hail, and then that overall line of storms. The NAM has a much more significant line of storms, and that's why that 30% significant for wind is out favoring the NAM solution. But as we move into the day on Saturday, we can see how this squall line will form, this line of storms will form further north, and then areas further south, there is a chance that we could see some supercell development. We're just going to take a sounding here quickly and see how it looks. There is some turning in the photograph that could support a tornado risk. There's enough moisture for this setup. The instability is going to be fairly weak. I'm not sure there would be a surface-based storm in this sounding, just because there is a capping inversion. Our surface-based cape is less than 500, so this particular sounding seems fairly marginal, but regardless of if storms were surface-based or not, there would still be a risk of large hail. You can see that sounding, that was partly in the storm, but overall it's going to be a little bit lower on the Cape side, especially compared to what we have today. And but there's still going to be some pretty strong shear aloft, I believe. Take a look at that quickly. See what we have into the, still a 40 knot low level jet, so even with a more marginal Cape event, that can still lead to some instances of damaging winds for sure. Just show the low end amount of Cape, and we can just see how basically this very narrow quarter of 1,000+ Cape forms, and maybe right in there could be a, that makes a lot more sense there. That 1,000+ Cape, that makes more sense on why we're seeing a slight risk. There, and then we can see it's like a second round of storms fires up. Let's see. Maybe, let's see, kind of like same round, but initiates just a little later along the same frontal boundary. But that could, this would make more sense for why there's a slight risk out, because here's a little more, like a more moderate instability overlapping favorable shear. That makes more sense if you could see a tornado or two with this, but I do think damaging winds and hail would stay the primary risk across Oklahoma for this day. Further north, the mode's a lot more linear, and that would probably suggest mostly just a damaging wind threat. We're going to take a look a little further north, so now we're going to take a look at areas like Iowa, just see what they're suggesting. Going to see generally weak Cape, probably generally the HRRR is suggesting less than 1,000 Cape, but the shear environment I would still think would be strong. Let's just take a look at our bulk shear. Yeah, we're going to see 50 to 60 knots, so that across Iowa and maybe further south still, 50 to 60 knots, that could support updraft organization. So even with not quite a strong cape, that can still get us some severe weather, and I would think our low-level jet would probably be just as strong, or if not stronger, across areas in Iowa. And yeah, we can see there's a powerful low-level jet that's going to support that damaging wind threat, because those strong low-level winds, the storm can translate those to the ground, and that can support a tornado and damaging wind threat. Though based off the storm mode, I would think in Iowa it would mostly be a damaging wind risk. Let's see, is there anything else we should be taking a look at? We'll take a look at our storm relative velocity values, see how they are across areas of Oklahoma for that tornado threat. And they are somewhat, well, especially by 2Z, they are more favorable. Yeah, the storm relative velocity values do seem to support a tornado risk. And if a supercell can form in that environment especially, yeah, our storm relative velocity values appear favorable for tornadoes, so could see a couple tornadoes in central Oklahoma, though it is unclear if storms will stay discrete long enough, so that is a bit of an uncertainty with that. But I think regardless, damaging winds and hail could form with any clusters of storm that organize across portions of Oklahoma. And then here we know it's going to be a more one-year mode, so that suggests, again, mostly just a damaging wind risk. We are now going to take a look at the NAM 3K. We'll see what the 18Z does just for today very quickly. And this fires, oh wow, this is a lot different than 12Z. It fires a mostly linear mode first, which I find a little bit weird. The NAM does have a bias for a linear mode. I would still think we'd still see at least some supercells, just a mostly discrete mode despite this. Again, favorable of large hail. Let's just see what it does with the overnight squall line, though. Here we can see, especially across portions of western Kansas, that line does organize more. Just take a sounding out ahead of it. Why not? See a looping hodograph that could support an isolated tornado threat as well as damaging wind threat, given what I know will be very strong shear in place over this. Yeah, very, very strong low-level shear. So we could see perhaps a couple nocturnal tornadoes and the possibility of a widespread damaging wind risk into the overnight hours. It just depends on exactly how much that line wants to organize. But we're going to go back to 12Z to take a look for tomorrow, just because not enough of it has loaded in on the 18Z, and I need to get ready for work in a little bit. Just see what we have. And the NAM really doesn't fire these storms down here. You can see it tries to initiate them, but overall it just doesn't form, which does cast a little bit of uncertainty into that risk of severe weather. Because these storms, there's a little bit of uncertainty with them firing, so if they do, I think all hazards will be possible, but there is a little bit of uncertainty with that. I'm just going to quickly take a peek at a couple other models and see what they try and do for initiation quickly. This model does show some initiation of clusters of storms, perhaps some supercells as well, so and then we're going to take a look at one more quickly, see what it does. And that model does show initiation again in the late evening hours. So definitely interesting to see. Most models tend to show initiation, but there is still a little bit of uncertainty, especially regarding the coverage of storms. Let's just finish putting through the NAM on this. We can see how a little farther north the northern mode does evolve, and it just occurred to me that on the HRRR, we never took a look at the areas further north, so we're actually going to do that quickly first. This farther north to me, the mode doesn't feel quite as organized. It seems a little more conditional in my opinion, but the risk is still definitely there. You can see how these bands of storms do organize. This is around our northern 5% tornado area, but there's not really much change in the direction of winds with height. And that does lead to some issues, especially with tornado potential. But still, I believe marginal cape, at least marginally sufficient cape. Oh, there we go. There's some modest cape overlapping a pretty strong speed shear. Maybe not that much. A directional shear could get some instances of large hail, damaging winds, and perhaps a tornado or two. But yeah, because here we got, this is in the afternoon hours. There's our 30 to 40 knot low level jet in the areas where the storms are. So that could lead to a little bit of a tornado threat, but overall, I think the area further south looks a bit more organized, at least based off the HRRR. Yes, definitely sufficient bulk shear, though. Just curious, maybe the storm relative velocity values are much higher. I think these areas are generally not in the warm sector, though. They're probably north of the warm front. Yeah, so yeah, I think the severe risk is still definitely there. Perhaps some damaging winds and hail, maybe a tornado or two, but I think the areas further south have a more organized risk, or at least a more certain risk we're a little more confident in, because it's just a very narrow corridor where the storms are going to develop in the warm sector, and then they're going to move out of it, thus ending any tornado potential with them. Let's switch back to our NAM, and we'll take a look at our northern mode first. Can we see enough of it on the 18Z? Can kind of start to see it on the 18Z now. You can see on the NAM it does try and fire. Well, okay, it's not letting me take sounding, so we're going to have to go back to the 12Z. Sorry about that. We can see how, at least on the 12Z NAM, it looked like the storms fire in a later time period, which is definitely interesting. A little bit of uncertainty with where the coverage of these storms seems to be. HRRR likes storm initiation further west, but NAM likes it a little later and further to the east. You can see there's these clusters of storms, perhaps some supercell structures trying to form, and if we take a sounding in here, this is by 8 o'clock at night, you can see there's still not much directional shear, but there's a powerful low-level jet under this. So despite that, we could still see some damaging winds and tornadoes as well. Yeah, because if we have a 40 to 50 knot low-level jet, that would be supportive of all hazards, but I overall think areas maybe further south have a little higher chance of seeing severe weather, in my opinion. Take a look at our reflectivity for areas further south. I know we started going over this, but then I got a little bit distracted. See this, the NAM initiates this line pretty late. I mean, it initiates it by 0Z. You can see that's where it begins organizing. Perhaps we could see some storms form out ahead of it, but the main line doesn't initiate till the late evening hours, so this could be a little more after dark risk again. You can see there's much more instability ahead of this line. At least a tiny bit of instability, some modest amounts of instability and the strong low level shear with this could lead to is likely going to lead to at least some damaging wind risk. Definitely not as significant as what we'll be dealing with overnight tonight across portions of Kansas, perhaps Oklahoma, and into Nebraska. Not as widespread of a damaging wind risk as that, but still, a 15% chance within a 25-mile radius is definitely worth noting. And we're just going to take a look at our energy helicity index, which is our blended cape and shear, and just see what this tries to do with it. We're going to see how, here's our environment, so our cape, where at least modest destabilization will occur. It's generally going to be these values in the one just based off the just based off the one to cape and shear. You need at least some cape, and where you're seeing those blue values, knowing that we have strong shear across this entire area, you can kind of see that area of greater instability. You can kind of see how areas further south here does have more, likely have more instability, but at least the NAM on this run didn't fire storms. A lot of others did. Just going to take a look at 18Z really quickly just to see if that did change. I'm just curious since all the other models did like to show it. Can't really see far enough to tell. Maybe trying to bubble some stuff there, but it's really too early to tell. I'm just going to take a look back, see if the day one updated their outlook yet. Yeah, they did. Okay, let's see. Is there anything new? Looks mostly the same. Yeah, so this is going to be the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed. Please consider liking and subscribing. I'll link my Twitter down below so I can perhaps post some updates of ongoing storms once I get out of work tonight. And I will see you next time. Bye.